I'm Malcolm. I'm a board member, and I'm going to be emceeing this first section of talks. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce Jacob with Delete Your Data.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. As was stated, my name is Jacob. I'm a recent law graduate out of Las Vegas, Nevada. I am anxiously waiting the bar results, which come out in 4 hours. So if I look nervous later, that's why. I mostly work in data privacy, open source, nonprofit formation, and a little bit of alternative dispute resolution. So if you see me afterwards and want to talk about any of that, I love to talk about all of those. I'm also the backup plan. Our executive director was supposed to be here, but she just started a brand new job, so congrats to her. She's been at least a few years to the Portland BSides, so she's very sad she couldn't make it this time. So what I'm going to talk about today, or I guess I should go back and talk about Delete Your Data generally. Delete Your Data is a nonprofit that is based in Las Vegas, Nevada, but we operate throughout the country. We do data deletion services for individuals looking to delete their data from different companies' websites and that sort of thing. So I'm going to kind of use Delete Your Data to frame the laws surrounding data deletion in the United States and abroad. So how we're going to do that is we're going to first talk about just how the data deletion process works. And it's not going to make much sense because it seems oversimplified. So then we're going to go into the laws that support what we're doing. And then with that legal framework, we'll be able to revisit how deleteyourdata.com deletes your data. And then we'll talk a little bit about why it matters and things moving forward and how we can support data privacy and data deletion in the future. So how it works is a user reaches out on our website, and then we have a scraping service which will scrape their information, or if they just give us specific accounts, we can delete those specific accounts, and then we just request the deletions. So like I said, if that seems a little bit oversimplified, it definitely is. That last part is where you need the legal framework to get a little bit more context. So there's multiple laws that enforce a right of deletion for personally identifiable information upon a user's request. In order to really understand this, we got to know what that personal identifiable information actually is. So what is it? It's any information that can be used to distinguish or trace an individual's identity. Some common examples are name, social security number, the date and place of birth, mother's maiden name, and then also biometric records, so anything that would identify that person as, for me, it'd be Jacob Smith. So it also includes any information that's linked to that information that could also be used to identify that person. So that's really what the data deletion laws focus on, is that personal identifiable information. So the GDPR, which we'll talk about in a little bit, gives some good examples of what is and what isn't personal identifiable information. At Delete Your Data, we get a good amount of requests for that top stuff. So if somebody writes a journal article about, let's say, a politician running for court in Nevada, you can't really request that that be deleted. That's information somebody else wrote about you. But if that person were to upload a bunch of information on their social media, that can be requested to be deleted. So what are the big laws that help us control our data? First, we have the GDPR, which all of these have their limitations. And then there's also the California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA. It operates mostly in California, but there's also a bunch of other state laws that do things similar in different states. And then lastly, we have just enforcement of a company's privacy policies. So the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, it's the big player in the EU, the European Union. And it, among other things, provides a right to be forgotten. So that right to be forgotten is a right to be deleted. So although it only applies to EU citizens, a lot of companies will include in their privacy policies a general right to deletion that encompasses both EU citizens and abroad. So even if you're not an EU citizen, sometimes if a company is compliant with the GDPR, you can still request your data to be deleted. CCPA is kind of the first U.S. counterpart to the GDPR. It's the California Consumer Privacy Act. It's really limited to who it applies to. So it only applies to for-profit businesses that collect or sell the information of California residents, and they have to have one of those three. So they have to have either a gross annual revenue of over 25 million. They have to either buy, receive, or sell the personal information of a certain number of California citizens, or they have to derive at least or over 50% of their profit from the selling of data. So yeah, the CCPA states that people have a right to request that a business delete the personal identifiable information about the consumer, which the business has collected from the consumer. So again, that comes from those requests. So the user has to request that they get their data deleted, and then if that company falls under the CCPA, they are required to delete that data. So some other big state laws, you have Virginia, which is almost identical to the CCPA, except it has different levels of control for organizations. And then you have Colorado. Colorado is an interesting case because it's the first one to apply to nonprofits as well as for-profit businesses. So a lot of the people I work with are nonprofits, so they're very concerned about Colorado. Colorado and Virginia, I think both don't start becoming enforceable until 2023, so it's going to be interesting to see how that impacts the legal framework surrounding data deletion. So that gets us to privacy policies. So a lot of companies will have the CCPA or some other provisions tied into their privacy policies. Privacy policies are tied often to terms of service. And these privacy policies and terms of service are basically a promise or an agreement between the company and the consumer that's visiting the website or engaging with the product. And the FTC Act is what allows us to, or allows them to enforce these provisions within a privacy policy. So the FTC Act prohibits unfair or deceptive acts or practices in or affecting commerce. Most of the litigation there surrounding data privacy has come from the deceptive acts. So that's if the privacy policy promises something and the company's not doing that, the FTC can come in and say you're being deceptive, you're lying on your privacy policy, we're going to seek enforcement against you. So the big question here that companies think of is, why not just not include a privacy policy or just make the privacy policy so confusing that it's rendered useless. So a lot of the state laws like the CCPA, the Virginia, the VCDPA, I think is the acronym for it, they have requirements within them that the company have a privacy policy, that it be easy to read, and that it be easy to find on the website. So a big thing with the readability of privacy policy is not using a bunch of legalese. It drives a lot of the older attorneys crazy, but there is a big shift to write things in plain language, especially things that are put out to a consumer like a privacy policy or a terms of service in plain language. So this is the Flesch Reading Ease test. Basically, what it does is it using two metrics, the number of words per sentence and the number of syllables per word, it gives every paragraph or body of text a score. And these scores relate to different grade levels. So you can see the higher the score, the more readable it is. So a 5th grade reading level is between 100 and a 90. And what they want from these privacy policies in terms of services is like a 7th, maybe 8th grade max, but as readable as possible. So looking at this and looking at some terms of service, we can see really how they stack up. Facebook's score on that would be a 10th to 12th grade level, and it only goes up from there with Reddit and YouTube being significantly higher. So these aren't very readable documents, these terms of service and these privacy policies. So that's why a lot of these laws, like the CCPA, the VCDPA, the CPA, which I think is the Colorado Privacy Act, these new clauses in them that will enforce the readability and simplicity of these terms of service and privacy policies are so important. And then as far as the ease of finding the hyperlink on the website, there's a great case involving Uber and their hyperlinks. They had, I think it's gray text on a white background for their link for their privacy policy or terms of service. And so it's basically unfindable on a website. So the court ruled that they needed to have it in blue, it needs to be distinguishable, and it needs to be at the front of the website. It needs to be easy to find. And this one did involve specifically the enforcement of an arbitration provision, but it's likely to see it expand to greater context than just being like enforceable generally. So this is a great website. The terms of service didn't read. So it's a play on the acronym TLDR. And what they'll do is they will go into these really confusing terms of service or privacy policies, and they'll simplify them and just provide a much simpler version of it. So it's a great resource if you have terms of service or privacy policies that you need to look to, like the Reddit one, which is particularly confusing. They'll provide a more simplified version of that. This is some more grading of different websites and how well they did on their reading, ease of use, and everything. So Facebook, obviously not doing great. Amazon, also a grade E. Some good ones, however, as far as protecting your data privacy are Startpage and DuckDuckGo. Here's another website with a confusingly similar name, which is tosback.org. This one's done by our friends over at the EFF, which is a great organization. I highly recommend reading their blogs. So this one will give you live updates of changes to the privacy policy and terms of service as they happen. Great resource, great organization. But let's get back to how this, now that we have this legal framework, how it applies to how we delete people's data. So once again, the user reaches out. We scrape or we find the particular sources that they listed, and then we request deletions. But now we have a little bit more context for that last one. We request deletions either through the state laws, or what we often look to first are these privacy policies. So if a user were to come to us, what's the example I have here? Yeah, True People Search. So if a user came to us and said, I have information on True People Search, I want you to delete it. What we would do is we would first look at the privacy policy. None of this text really helps us, but it is the start of their privacy policy. But as we go down to what data they collect and what they do with that data that they collect, we eventually get to this one here. And this is where it's really important for us, at least. That link right there allows for a deletion request. And so if a consumer or a client comes to us, we will go to the company's privacy policy, find if they have a link like that, which is usually good news, and we'll follow it. And so here, simply have to put your email in, verify that you're not a robot, and then agree to their terms. And then they sent us an email in this case with another link that we had to click on. Clicking on that link led us to another page where we could fill out a request to actually get the data deleted. I don't think this one has company here. A lot of them will ask if you're deleting data on somebody else's behalf, and so if that is an option, we let them know that we are deleting John Smith's information on his behalf as deleteyourdata.com. But not all websites and privacy policies have those. And so if we would have run into any trouble here, we would have looked for this link here. And importantly, this address here. and then we would send demand letters and that sort of thing to the company to try and enforce the deletion of that user's data. So this outlines a couple of the other laws that are built within the CCPA and some of these other state laws. The ability to opt out of data collection. A lot of different state laws require that they allow users to opt out of the collection of their data. Non-discrimination is a really cool one that's in the CCPA. You can't treat users differently just because they decided not to get their information collected. And then a lot of people or companies and organizations will have a specific section outlining if you're a California resident, your rights. As more and more of these states adopt data protection laws, we'll hopefully see that bridge throughout the United States and become the norm, not the exception. So to protect people's data, what can be done besides just deleting the data? So there's a big spicy case going on right now, FTC suing Kochava, which is a data tracking company that sells data location to other organizations. And the FTC is suing them. This one's kind of fun because instead of relying upon the deceptive part of the FTC Act that I mentioned earlier, this one actually talks about the Unfair Act, and it says that it's unfair to track people's data because that data may lead to clinics, places of worship, and other sensitive locations. So hopefully that expands to where the FTC starts enforcing the unfair acts and practices as well. Unfortunately, the only relief they were seeking in this case was kind of like blacklisting those locations so you can't see if somebody actually goes to those locations. So it's not as robust as it could be, which is why the FTC could do more with better laws in place. A federal data protection law would allow them to act a little bit more diligently. So here's some resources just real quick. Monitor.firefox.com, donotpay.com, and then, of course, deleteyourdata.com. And I want to thank everybody for their time. I am happy to answer any questions in person. You'll see me around. I'll be here all day. Or you can visit us at Delete Your Data. You can follow us on Twitter at Delete Your Data. You can follow me at IP Las Vegas. Or you can follow my sideshow Instagram at Yeehaw Circus. Or you can just email me if you want. So thank you all. This has been wonderful. I really appreciate it.
All right.
I have a question. Is this mic on? Oh, perfect. Okay. If you want to ask a question, please come up.
Hey there. I was wondering what your thoughts are on Discord.
On
Yeah, because on Discord, when you try to delete your account, all your messages on Discord servers still hang around.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I don't have any personal thoughts on it. I think we're so far behind as far as data deletion laws go that any steps in the right direction are great. But I think something similar happens with Facebook groups, I think it was, or something like that. That'll be an interesting one to get to. So if you would like your information deleted off of Discord, we would be happy to, visit the website and we can see what we can do.
Hi, I'm just curious if there's ways that you can maybe proxy through European Union and then get GDPR enforced, or if there's any tricks like that. I've heard of ways that you can maybe get your IP coming out of California and then do an opt-out. Wondering if any of those avenues have been explored.
We haven't explored them yet. The good thing is I write a lot of privacy policies and stuff, and that's kind of my side of things usually. This is like a nonprofit that I help as well. And a lot of more organizations are caring about data deletion generally. And so those requirements and provisions that are in the GDPR and the CCPA are being applied across the board to all users. So I think encouraging companies to do that is really our best bet. But I haven't looked into like patching people through. Yeah, thank you.
So my question is, like with the California and Virginia one, is there like a list somewhere of states that have published a law or a policy type of thing that we could go to as a reference point?
Yeah, we have a couple blog posts on deleteyourdata.com, but I found a good table like maybe a month ago, but I forgot who posted it. So I will track that down and find it and possibly repost it on our website.
Hi. So I was wondering, with respect to the simplistic language so that people can actually, understand what a privacy policy means, when you're mapping from legal language, which I'm assuming has a very specific intent behind a lot of words, you could have a very precise meaning. And in simplifying that language, you might get your syllable count down or whatever metric you're using there. But you might be hiding some of the actual precision of what the agreement actually means. Is there a way to kind of, I guess, account for that without being falling under the category of being deceptive? Because it's like, oh, well, you said one thing that has a common English understanding of what it means, but it actually means something a lot more confining.
Yeah, it's so there's a definite migration to just common meanings of contract terms. So the first, when you're doing contract interpretation, one of the first things you want to do is look at the plain meaning. And if the plain meaning's there and it's unambiguous, then you're done, in most cases. So the idea that more complex language is more precise is a bit of a fallacy. So you do want to just use plain unambiguous language.
Hey, thanks for the talk. I was just wondering if there's one addition or change to US regulations with regard to people's personal data and PII and things like that. Do you have one in your back pocket that you'd recommend, hey, here's a policy change we could make that would protect people's privacy and help the customers you have at deleteyourdata.com?
As a government level or a company level?
Yeah, a law. That
Yeah, I mean, as a government level, if we had a federal data protection law that didn't have a bunch of hidden stuff in it, it would allow the FTC to greater, enforce data privacy a lot better.
Cool.
Yeah, they're kind of handcuffed by the unfair and deceptive acts.
Got it, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.